run-down shack. And there was a little young boy sitting on the front porch in a chair, in a pair of ragged overalls, no shoes, a corncob pipe hanging out of his mouth. The preacher asked him, said, "Son," says, "where's your daddy?" Says, "Oh," says, "my daddy's in jail for moonshine." Well, he says, "Where's your mom?" He says, "Oh, my mom run off with the sheriff who arrested my dad." He says, "You have any other family members?" He says, "Yes," I have an older brother. Says, "Where's he?" Said, "Well," says, "he's up in Harvard." And the preacher says, "Thank God there's at least somebody who got their life together." What's he studying? "Oh, he's not studying anything. They're studying him." Merriam-Webster defines or describes adversity as a state of or instance of serious or continued difficulties or misfortune. Well, that pretty much gets it, doesn't it? And it's something that literally fits millions of people all over the world, not just in America. There are just millions of people. Particularly, think about all the folks who just went through these hurricanes. Now, you just don't get much more adverse than that. But there are a lot of things that cause people to have to deal with adversity, financial problems. They can create some real stress for us. Social reasons. We don't fit in to certain people's groups. We're not a part of the in crowd. Political reasons. Cultural reasons. Interpersonal relationships. And of course, ourselves. By the choices that we make, we can create our own problems. The 31st Psalm is, of course, the Psalm of David, and he faces a variety of difficulties in his life. Those who are created by others, those who are created by his own personal decisions, and those that are caused by his family. One of the great adversities that David dealt with was his relationship with Saul. Now we know the story basically. Saul brings David. Saul is suffering depression, really. That's what the modern people would say. Modern psychologists would say that Saul is a depressed individual for whatever reason. The Bible says that the Spirit of God had withdrawn from him. Well, that's enough reason to give you a lot of depression. At any rate, he brings David in. He hears David play the harp, little finger harp, and he loves the music, and he brings David in. And to play the music, it soothes his soul, and he can rest, he can sleep, he can just be comfortable with David. Well, the problem is, David becomes a warrior in the army of Saul. And David becomes very popular. We know the story. He's very good at what he does. He's a very good soldier. And so as they are marching home from battle and going through the towns and villages of Israel, the women are singing, "Saul kills his thousands, but David kills his 10,000s. Well, if you're a king, that kind of hit your ego real bad, wouldn't it? I mean, that, you don't really take it at heart. You don't really look at it the way that Saul probably should. He's jealous. He's jealous that David is so popular and he is not. And he makes every attempt that he can on several occasions to kill David. Then there's David's personal decisions. We're so familiar with the story of Bathsheba, you don't even need me to recount it for you. But it involves adultery, murder, and deceit. And it just gets overwhelming for David. And then there's the reasons that are caused by his own family. He had a son called Amnon. Amnon had a sister named Tamar. She was a beautiful young woman. Tamar felt like he just had to have her. Now remember, in our day we call that incest. But we're looking thousands of years ago, and I think she really was his half-sister. But that makes any difference. She's still his sister. He eventually seduces her and then despises her and throws her out of his house. Well, along comes Absalom. And Absalom is an interesting name. there's a lot of irony in that name. It's made up of two words, two Hebrew words. Ab, which means father, and Shalom, which means peace. So literally the word Absalom means father of peace. Well, Absalom was anything but a father of peace. When he hears about the incident with Amnon and Tamar, he makes a plan that he is going to get revenge for her, and he does. He kills his brother. And then he comes that time where, that he is just thinks the old man is too old to be king any longer. He can't make proper decisions, so it's time for him to go. He decides that he's going to be king, so he gets him a little cadre of people together, some that'll run before him in his chariot. I always find that an interesting story and a rather comical situation. I'm not interested in running before Absalom's chariot, just to make him look good. But at any rate, he does all this stuff, and he attempts to overthrow his father. And his father does absolutely have to leave the palace and cross the Jordan River for a while to save his life. But Absalom is eventually killed. Now, are these some of the things that David is thinking about, along with the fact that he is king? He has a lot of people, a lot of Gentile nations that are under his thumb, that pay him tribute. He is the monarch of the day, and they probably resent him. They don't like doing that. Are these some of the things that David is thinking about as he writes this little psalm? I don't know. But facing affliction, the business world has come up with a model to solve problems. And to put those ideas into the context of today's topic, we might be able to solve some of our own problems. It begins with the idea, identify the problem, know what it is, be able to define it, be able to express it. And then, after you have done that, identify the causes. What causes that problem? Is it another individual? Is it you? Is it something else? Then you begin to establish a plan of action for solving. You put the plan into effect. And then after you've done that for a while, you make an evaluation. And then after that, you go back and you make corrections in your plan where it's necessary to do so. We don't really live life on a business model, do we? But it does have some practical applications for our life on an everyday basis, particularly when we're dealing with life. I suspect that when Leon Coco was hired by Chrysler Corporation to rescue Chrysler automobile manufacturer from bankruptcy and absolutely destroying the company, that he might have used some of these things in saving the company. Well, they work out in everyday life as well if we're willing to apply them sometimes. It is simple to state these principles, but it's very difficult to put them in practice. It's very hard. They're not for the faint of heart, because the faint of heart will not do anything about their afflictions they are dealing with, and may very well carry them to the grave. Remember last spring, May, June, somewhere along there, when the Republican senators were out practicing, getting ready for a baseball team. And some deranged individual decided, because they were Republicans, he was going to go get rid of them. And he went out with his gun and he shot some of them. And one of those individuals was Steve Scalise, Representative Steve Scalise. And of course, he came back to work this week. Came back to work on Thursday, this past week. And he suffered tremendously. He still got a long way to fully recover. He said this: after I had been shot, I lay perfectly still on the ground and did not move. And I called out to God. And it just seemed to me, as I lay there, not knowing whether I was going to live or die, that I felt the Spirit of God just absolutely take total control of my life. Do we have to get to that point in our life before we really turn to God to the level that we feel that God can take total control, and we allow God to take total control of our life. I hope not. I hope not. The greatest challenge of our life is facing our own death. Many of us can't do that. Many of us don't want to talk about death. But we are going to die. Unlike the young lady in the beauty contest that we talked about Wednesday night, if she could live forever, the question was, if she could live forever, would she do it? And her answer was simple. Well, we're not made to live forever, and if I wanted to live forever, I would not live forever, so because we are not made to live forever. I mean, it was just a nonsense answer. But she was chosen Miss America. Some days, well, we have to accept our death before we can accept our life. The congressman was professing Christianity, and fortunately he got the opportunity to speak to God before anything happened. Many people don't, because their life is snuffed out so suddenly and too unexpectedly. Whatever David's adversity or adversities are, whatever his problem, he knew that God could, and that he could talk to God about it, and so do we. We know that. We know that. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. I'm not telling you anything that you don't do. Talk to God. Now, don't try to impress God with a great long prayer. Don't try to impress God with a verbose vocabulary. Don't try to impress God at all. Come to God in humility and humbleness before Him to express what it is you want to talk to Him about. He can face God openly and honestly, without shame, without intimidation. I think sometimes we might be a little afraid of God. Or I think sometimes we might be a little afraid to tell God what God already knows. And we'll say, well, God already knows. Why should I have to talk to Him about it? Because God wants to hear from us. God wants us to be able to explain ourselves to Him and to talk to Him. Well, look at David's request to God. Bow down your ear to me. Wow. Come down to my level, God. Let's talk one-on-one. Let's talk, quote-unquote, man to man. Let's talk face to face, person to person, heart to heart. Meet me, God, where I am. That's the idea behind those words. And of course, he requests a speedy delivery from whatever it is that's afflicting him. I don't know that he got a speedy delivery, but he knows this. He knows that God is his rock of refuge. Do we think about God that way? We sang the old hymn, Rock of Ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. It's a request. Every time I sing that song, I think about Moses who comes to God and says, listen, we've been talking, we've done this, we've done that, and you and I have been in conversation for a long time, but I have never seen you. God says, well, no man's ever seen me and lived. Well, I want to see you. He says, all right, here's what I'll do for you. I'll tuck you in the cleft of this rock, and as I pass by, you can get a glimpse of me. And as the Bible records it, David just got a glimpse of God's backside. I don't know what God's backside looks like. I'm not going to worry about that. The Bible doesn't tell us either. What a powerful scene and a powerful story. Speedy recovery. God is his rock of refuge. God was his fortress of defense. Every time I see that expression, I think of the old Martin Luther hymn, a mighty fortress is our God. Now, I'm saying that very in a while. Well, I'll do that soon, Doris. But it's a great hymn. And he might have gotten whatever else he wanted from God. Here's a word from the second 7th chapter of 2 Samuel goes like this. Now it came to pass when the king was dwelling in his house, and the Lord had given him rest from all his enemies all around. And it goes on to say that he calls Samuel. And he says, look, Samuel, or Nathan the prophet says, look here, Nathan, I'm living in this great place. I'm living in this palace. And the Ark of the Covenant is just in a tent down there. I want to build a temple. You know the story, Nathan. So I'll take it to God for you. God says, no, you can't do it. You're a man with blood on your hands. But God did allow him to make preparations for it to happen. Now, David didn't get to this point overnight. He didn't get a speedy recovery overnight. He didn't get peace overnight. He didn't get rest from his enemies simply because God miraculously just made them disappear. Our enemies, our problems, our afflictions don't just miraculously go away. Sometimes they might. But sometimes they just hang around forever and ever, don't they? Absalom was killed in his attempt to overthrow his father. He was killed by the captain of David's army, Joab. And David was always concerned about this young man. And he always wanted to know about Absalom, what was going on in the battle. And when he got the news, he was simply heartbroken. And here's how the New Living Translation describes that moment. You can just feel the pain in David's life. The king was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room over the gateway and burst into tears. It's a guardhouse. It's a room where the guards would stay. The gateway was the main entrance into the city. You see, the ancient world had its own means of surveillance of who came and went in the city. We got cameras all over the place, everywhere now. Intersections. I mean, we just got cameras all over our cities. All over. You can't get away with anything. Be careful when you're out there. And as he went, he cried, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." You can just feel the pain that David is experiencing in that moment when he knows that his son is dead. Resolving our issues with adversity may involve some pain for us. It very well may cause us to hurt someone else, particularly an individual at the heart of our problem. Trusting God. Twice David says that. I trust you, Lord. I put my trust in you. Now, if I ask you this morning, do you trust God? Every one of us would say yes. Every one of us would say. But do you really trust God? When the going really gets tough, when life really hits the road, do we really, really trust God that He's going to take care of us? I think we would say yes. I'm not talking about lip service here, of course. I'm talking about the kind of trust that permeates our whole entire being. Our whole entire life. Every day of our life. I'm talking about a trust that totally envelops your soul. Do we trust God that way? Yeah. Remember the scene on that early morning post-resurrection day? Jesus is down by the Sea of Galilee. The disciples have been out fishing all night. And they're coming in, and it's foggy, and they've not quite make out who Jesus really is. And he hollers at them, you know the story. "Children, have you got any food?" And they say, "No, we don't have any food. Didn't catch anything." You've been there. You've done that. You're a fisherman. Well, he says, "Cast your net over on the right side." We know the story. They did. They got more fish than they could pull in. And the disciple that Jesus loved, we think it was John, said, "It's the Lord." Well, we know what Peter's going to do. He's half naked. He puts on his outer garment, throws it on, jumps overboard, beats everybody to shore. You know, I think Peter did that for this reason. Because he had denied Christ 3 times. I don't know if he had seen Christ before, but he really wanted to know what Christ thought about him, maybe. I don't know. They ate. Jesus has breakfast fixed, as you remember, and then they eat, and he calls Peter aside, says, Peter, do you love me? Peter says, yes. You know I do, Lord. Then go feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Yes, you know I love you. Oh, go feed my lambs. Then he asked him a third time, Peter, do you really love me? Lord, you know everything. Peter's getting a little frustrated right now. He's beginning to get worried just a little bit. Do you really love me? Yes, Lord, you know I really love you. Then feed my sheep. I want to take that idea within the context of today's topic. And I want to ask this question, maybe for Jesus, on behalf of Christ. You can fire me later if you want to. Christ might ask us, Christian, do you trust me? Christian, do you really trust me? Do you really trust me? David's enemies are couching at the door. They have cast the net. They're waiting to snare him. His enemies despise him. Listen to this description. Now this is pretty place. This is a pretty low place in life. He tells us in the psalm, his enemies despise him. His neighbors despise him. He is repulsive to his acquaintances, whomever they may be. The people outside, whoever they may be, flee from him. He feels forgotten like a dead man. He is a broken vessel. He is beaten down, a broken individual. That's what adversity can do to us. Now, you just can't get any worse than that in life. That's about as low as you can get. Some of us would run to the psychiatrist, or to the therapist, or to the counselor if we felt that bad. But see, David don't have that in his day. And twice he affirms, Lord, I put my trust in you. He takes refuge under the wings of God. God has become his shield and buckler. And there he finds safety and comfort from the storm that assails him. There he finds ease from whatever it is that is bothering him. There he knows he will not be destroyed by whatever it is that is disturbing him. Perhaps the cause or causes of our adversity are not out to literally destroy us, but they take on a personality of their own. And that doesn't mean that they won't use us for their benefit, to get out of us what they can. And it causes us great pain. It is our trust in God that helps sustain us in these difficult times. If we're ever going to trust God, it's in those times. Now, David is very much into God. He is deeply into God. Now, some folks are Christian, and I believe they are. But how much are they into God? How deeply are they connected to God? You are my God. My times are in your hand. The word's plural. And I come across that verse, and I thought about it. Wow. My times. Not just today. Not just if I have tomorrow. Not just a punctilious moment, but all of my time. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, whatever may be going on in my life, I am in your hand. That's a source of comfort for us. It's a great comfort for us to know that. The Lord is my shepherd, David could declare. I shall not want. We know what a shepherd does. One of my favorite verses, it comes out of the book of Psalms, Psalm 63. O God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. A life lived in adversity is like that. And some folks live with adversity every day. They get up with it in the morning. They go to bed with it at night. And it's there all the time. I just cannot seem to get away from it. We feel cut off from God. We feel, as the psalmists often do, that we are going down into a pit. Sheol, the place of death. One final thought. After he pours out his heart to God and letting know God how he feels and what's going on in his life and what's happening to him and what's taking place, he concludes his supplication with a strong, positive affirmation. Hear the words. Oh, how great is your goodness, which you have laid up for those who fear you, which you have prepared for those who trust in you. In the presence of the sons of men, you shall hide them in the secret place of your presence. From the plots of men, you shall keep them secretly in a pavilion. I come across that word pavilion. You know, here at the beach, we talk about pavilions. We talk about that place we go and gather and have video games, this game, that game, and skee ball. Never understood skee ball, but never played it. At any rate, we had all those kinds of places. But it has a different context, different meaning here. Sukkah, lair, covert, tabernacle. Tabernacle is a good word, a strong word, strong biblical word. Tabernacle literally means dwelling. It means that God has come down to dwell in our midst. That's what a church represents, wherever the church exists. Every church building across America, in any community where it stands, I don't care how big it is, how little it is, how fancy it is, how simple it is. It is a symbol of God's tabernacling in that place. You shall keep them secretly in a place from the strife of tongues. Blessed be the Lord, for he has shown me his marvelous kindness in a strong city. For I said in my haste, I am cut off from before your eyes. That's what it's like to live a life in constant adversity and affliction. And sometimes we give up too quickly. Sometimes we give up too quickly on God. Because we live in a microwave world where we expect instant gratification and solutions to our difficulties. We give up too quickly on God. We give up too quickly on ourselves. And we give up too quickly on our friends sometimes. Nevertheless, you heard the voice of my supplication when I cried out to you. Every time I think about praying, I think about Jonah. Remember Jonah? Heard a fellow preaching on Jonah this week, and he still wants to use the whale. The Bible doesn't use whales, it's just a great fish. And I've read some articles somewhere. I read an article where someplace one time said, some guy trying to figure out if Jonah really was swallowed by a whale or what kind of fish it was. He says, you know, it could have been about an 800-pound grouper. I don't know. The Bible says a great fish. How would you like to live in the belly of a fish for 3 days and sloshing around with all that stuff down there? You know what Jonah said? I cried out to you and you heard me. Because I know that whatever situation I'm in, if I cry out to God, he's going to hear me. Whatever may be going on in my life, whatever may be assailing me, whatever pain I'm going in, I cry out to God and I know God hears me. And God answered, Jonah said. He spewed him out on dry land. It definitely got Jonah's attention. Now, I hope you never have to get to a place like Jonah got to before you can cry out to God like Jonah did and get God's attention or whatever. God gets your attention. Remember the remark I made about Steve Scalise laying there dying, or maybe, didn't know what was going to happen, but in that serious moment, he cried out to God. I wonder if that's the first time that Steve Scalise ever got really serious with God? I don't know. We'll never know. But I certainly think it has awakened in him to this depth of his faith, to the necessity of his faith in God, to the importance of his relationship with God. Facing adversity. Don't ever try to do it without God. Don't ever try to do it on your own, because it just doesn't work. We're going to stand and sing our hymn, our closing hymn. And maybe God has spoken to you about some issue you need to come and pray about in your life. Hymn number 502. Open my eyes that I may see. If you need to come and pray, our altar is open.